All right, so today we're looking at 1-7, and we're going to go through just a few of your homework examples. We're not even doing half of them, but they shouldn't take you long. So this one says, write an expression for the perimeter. Whoops. Raise your hands. What does perimeter mean? The distance around the shape. So if I were here walking around my figure, and I walked around that direction, wouldn't I come across y? Then I would add to that the 7. Then I would add to that the next y, and I would add to that the 7. Can you do anything with that expression? Stephanie? What are you doing when you're turning into that? You're adding like terms. So your like terms, the y's are the same, so you have 2 y's. And then your 7's are both numbers, so add those, you get 14. This is the expression that I want versus the y plus 7 plus y plus 7. Do you have to show this step? Not necessarily. Question.
I don't understand like how you know if it's going to be y squared or 2y.
If you're adding the y's, it's always 2 y's. So if I have 1 y and I add another y, I've got 2 y's total. Whereas if we're going to get into exponent rules later, but when you do multiply things that are like bases, you add their exponents. So since y and y have an exponent of 1 each, 1 plus 1 is 2, so we end up with y squared.
Okay.
And we are going to do that on the back when we do area. Yes.
Would you be able to put it like that, or would you prefer that?
She wants to know, can she write it this way? So can she write 2 times 7 plus y? You can start that way, and that's perfect, but then I want you to distribute that 2 and collect your like terms. So she'll end up with 14 plus 2y, right? And there's another reason why y plus y is 2y, because what's 2 times y? 2y, and whether I use this expression or this expression, I should end up with exactly the same answer, right? All right, so I think you can do the rest of these, correct? Yeah. Now this one's a little funky, but just walk around it. Add together the like terms and create one expression. There's not going to be an equal sign because you don't know what it's equal to. So then if you look at questions 7 through 12, 7, 8, and 9 deal with perimeter. So I'll do number 7 with you. And it says, write an expression for the perimeter. So kind of the same thing you did above. So write the expression for perimeter. So if I walk around, I've got x plus 13 plus 15. Is that the expression that you wrote down? Is that your final expression that you wrote down? Can't I combine like terms? What are you going to end up with? X plus 28, right? So that's the expression that I want to see there. And then part B says, write an equation. Don't equations have equals in them? That's what makes it an equation. So write an equation stating that the perimeter, what's your perimeter? X plus 28 equals 47. I don't want you to solve that. You could if you wanted to, but it's not asking you to solve it. That's as far as you go. So you're basically doing mini word problems here. So 8 and 9 are exactly the same. So then flip it. How is 10, 11, and 12 different from 7, 8, and 9? Now we're looking at area. So this time you're going to write an expression for area, and all of these are rectangles. So above here, what's the formula for area of a rectangle? Base times height or length times width. Either one's correct. So this time you're given only 2 dimensions. It doesn't matter which is your base and which is your height. Aren't you going to take x times 8? Do I want it written x8? I want it written 8x. You absolutely positively must put the number in front of the variable. And don't give me a multiplication dot or parentheses. I want you to get in that habit of just writing 8x. So then these two are exactly the same. And then look at part B, write an equation. So again, we have an equation stating that the area equals 584. So please write that equation. this is what you should have written. Is that what you wrote? Yes. So you don't need to solve that either. All right, so then look at 13 through 30. We're going to go through the odds on here. You're to write the expression described. And then I'm going to have you do the other half and compare with the kids around you, and you're essentially going to get your homework done today. So let's talk about 13. If we subtract 2 from x, and notice the comma. Commas are huge in here. It's telling you to subtract the 2 from the x first, and then you have to add y. Question? Okay, so hang on. So if I subtract 2 from x, is that 2 minus x, or is it x minus 2? It's x minus 2. So this part right here is x minus 2. But because of that comma, and any time you see a comma, it probably implies that there should be parentheses in the problem. So because of the comma, we're going to put parentheses. Because that's an exception, it says do this first. Then it says add y, so what are you going to put? Just plus y. So that's your expression I want to see. We're putting the parentheses in there because of that comma, they're saying you've got to do that first instead of doing this first. All right, so then look at 15. Add the product of 5 and y to x. What do you have to do first? What do you have to do first? Yeah, you need to multiply and find that product of 5 and y. What does the product of 5 and y look like? 5 times y, or 5y, right? So the product of 5y is 5y. And it says add that product to x. Could you have x in the front? Could you have x plus 5y? Yes. Answering. Number 17, multiply x by the sum of 7 and y. What is x being multiplied by? The sum of 7 and y. So if I take the sum of, remember earlier in the first week of school, we did the sum of, the product of, the difference of, and the quotient of. 100% of the time, that means two things are either being added, subtracted, multiplied, or divided. So sum of 7 and y means 7 and y are being added. How do I show that it's being multiplied by x? Yes. Okay. Very good. Could you have put x in the back behind the parentheses? You could. It's uncomfortable because you're used to seeing what you would distribute in the front, but you could have put the x in the back, but you do have to use parentheses. Good. All right, then divide y by 7. See that comma? Technically, when we divide y by 7, so y is being divided by 7, it should look like a fraction. If you wrote y division sign 7, you absolutely better have parentheses. But because it's a fraction, it's almost like it's in parentheses already. So you could or you could not. The key online doesn't have it in parentheses, but for this particular one, it doesn't matter whether you put the parentheses in or not. Then add x. I'm sorry, z. Then add z. Again, your z can come behind or in front, but I'm going to put it in the order that it's given. So 21, write down what you think it should be, based upon what we've talked about. And you see a comma in there, right? So your add x and y should be in parentheses. Then what does square the result mean? Do I put a 2 in front, or do I put a 2 as an exponent? Stephanie? Yep, right there. And then 23, subtract the product of 5 and x from 7. I want you to think about that one. Subtract the product of 5 and x from 7. Notice that you have the product of. 100% of the time, the product of, sum of, difference of, quotient of will have and as part of its phrase. And that and separates the two things that are being added, subtracted, multiplied, or divided. TJ? No. So what does the product of 5 and x look like? Everybody. 5x. Then it says subtract that product from 7. So is it 5x minus 7 or is it 7 minus 5x? Yeah, because we're subtracting it from 7, right? So it has to be 7 minus 5x. And then 25, 11 times. So ask yourself, what is 11 being multiplied to? The quantity of y minus 3. Isn't that literal? Y minus 3? How do I multiply 11 to y minus 3? I need parentheses, right? So I'm going to put that in parentheses and put the 11 out in front. You write what you think add the cubes of 6 and x would look like. You do not have to evaluate. You just write it down on your paper. So it should be 6 to the third power plus x to the third power. Could you have x cubed plus 6 cubed? Could you reverse those? Yes. And then the last one here, subtract the square of p from 18. So think to yourself, what are you subtracting from what? So what do you think it is? Is it Deshaun, were you saying that? So we're going to take the 18 and subtract from that p squared. He is correct. Oops, you can't see that. So we're going to take 18 and subtract the p squared from that. So based upon that, I think you can do the rest of it. I do want you to do 14 through 30 right now. And I want you to compare with people around you. The answers are online, so do make sure you check them tonight.